Part 64. My green plums are super sweet. Author, Luke Ixie. Chapter 631. Chapter 631. Stay away from Yezikin. You told me that the plan failed. Did Yahantian find out about it? Miss, this is just a lesson. You should not trust Yezikin again in the future. Yewaiwei shook his head. No. Don't care about his business. Pei Yuchen hates iron. Miss, you are still trying to excuse Yahantian's son. Do you know why I was discovered? It's because the access card of the Ye group is actually equivalent to surveillance. When using that card, your range of activities is also under Yahantian's surveillance. I know that you trust him very much, Miss, but Miss, you are still too naive and have never thought about how much he trusts you. Yezikin gave you the card. Doesn't he know that this card has a surveillance function? But he didn't tell you this. He doesn't even know that we will use the access card he gave us to invest in Yashi. Okay, I know Miss, you always protect him. This time I stole the card and acted without authorization. Please punish me, Miss. Pei Yuchen bent down and lowered his head, and every movement affected his wounds and even if you try hard to endure it, it's hard to hide all the pain. Yewaiwei sighed. You're right, Assistant Pei, let's take care of the wound first. Everything Pei Yuchen does now and every word he says is for her sake. She can't deny the goodness of others. Pei Yuchen reached for the medicine box, but his movements were slow. Yewaiwei couldn't stand it anymore, so he directly fetched it for him. Where did they hurt you? It seemed that Yewaiwei planned to apply medicine to his injury personally. Pei Yuchen was flattered and said, Miss, leave the medicine box to me and I can take care of it myself. It's hard for you to raise your hand now. Don't worry, I can still apply medicine. Yewaiwei gave him a look, and Pei Yuchen didn't dare to resist anymore. It turned out that the little girl who spoke softly had indeed grown up. In the blink of an eye, even her words had a sense of refusal. Pei Yuchen had injuries on his face and on the front and back of his upper body. There was no blood, all the wounds were on the flesh. Yewaiwei looked at it without any reverie, and only felt angry. These people are so ruthless. Miss, you should have realized that the people in the Ye family are not good people. If you don't deal with them, they will not let you go. I know. Yahantian is not a kind person, she knows it. But she knew better what Pei Yuchen's purpose was when he said that to her. Pei Yuchen was not talking about Yahantian, but was reminding her repeatedly, Yezikin was also from the Ye family. Everyone in the Chiao family hopes that she will draw a line with Yezikin. What's funny is that Yahantian has become the person in the two families who supports them being together the most. Although, it has other purposes. Had I known that things would turn out like this, I should have gone to the database to look for you. It was my business to look for evidence from back then, but in the end it ended up hurting you. Young lady is worth a fortune and should be protected. I am rough-skinned and thick-bodied, so I won't get in the way, hiss. Pei Yuchen took a breath of cold air when he scratched a wound on his back. But now they calculate that they can only bear the pain themselves, because he sneaked in secretly and suffered first. It's just that a cautious person like Pei Yuchen was caught. After this time, it will be even more difficult to obtain information in the future. This time all the information from 10 years ago has been cleared out. Could it be that Yahantian has noticed our purpose and destroyed everything? Yewaiwei shook his head. No, it shouldn't be in the database. I have to try it myself. End of this chapter. My green plums are super sweet. Author, Luke Ixie. Chapter 632. Chapter 632. Brother. Do you want me? I can't let you take risks. Pei Yuchen was anxious and directly clasped Yewaiwei's finger. The sudden touch made Yewaiwei's hand shake so much that he lost the cotton swab. Pei Yuchen reacted suddenly, stood up, and picked up his clothes to cover the injury. Sorry, I'll do it myself. Okay. Ye Wei handed the whole bottle of medicine and the just opened medical cotton swab to Pei Yuchen. She turned her head and exhaled silently. The heartbeat is speeding up. At first, even when she saw Pei Yuchen's body, she felt nothing. Instead, she was filled with anger and hatred, but the moment of contact just now made her inspired. She is still not used to contact with the opposite sex. I'm going back to school in G City. I will think about a solution next week and try again next week. Yahantian is powerful. If you want to bring him down, you must be fully prepared. By the way, where is that card? Has been taken away by Yahantian. Took it away. Yahantian must know that Yezikin gave her the card. Is it taken away now to prevent her from going to the Ye group? Ye Wei returned to G City to go to school with doubts. That night, she knew what Yahantian meant by taking away the pass card. Yezikin put the pass card intact on the table. Ye Wei looked at the card, and the small scratches on it proved to her that it was the card that Yahantian took away from Pei Yuchen. Don't lose your card again. At this time, Ye Wei had just walked out of the kitchen. She witnessed with her own eyes Yezikin's natural movements. Still clearly heard what Yezikin said to her in a normal tone. Ye Wei clasped her fingers, don't you ask me why. Yezikin turned to stare at her, seeming to be thinking about how to answer her, or wondering why she asked this question. Ye Wei was actually very nervous. But suddenly I heard Yezikin say, no need. Ye Wei suddenly raised his head and asked subconsciously, why? Yezikin walked towards her, touched her head, and told her gently, I believe in you. Just 4 words, causing deep ripples in Ye Yi's already restless heart. She felt like she was dreaming at that moment, and only when she was dreaming could such sweet and beautiful things happen. She wasn't sure, so she tried to verify it again and again. Thousands of words turn into one question, Yezikin, is it worth it? The moment he lowered his head, he lifted her chin with his hand, and their foreheads touched each other. The voice brushed past my ears, gentle, affectionate and containing infinite tolerance, as long as it's you, anything is fine. Others may say such words as false sweet talk, but when Yezikin said these words to her, she believed that they must be sincere. That is because, as long as it is him, anything he says will be believed. The question Pei Yuchen asked her before, you trust him very much, but how much does he trust you, has finally been answered. It's 10. Ye Wei told him openly and frankly, my trust in you and your trust in me are all very high. But Yezikin suddenly shook his head and said, you should be at 20 points. Why? There are no 20 points. I leave everything that belongs to me to you for safekeeping. The moment the words fell, she seemed to hear the voice of joy. Ye Wei pushed the person against the wall with his backhand, and suddenly said boldly, brother. Do you want me? Yeah, send yourself out. What the little bell says here is exactly what you are thinking. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. My green plums are super sweet. Author, Luke Hixie. Chapter 633. Chapter 633. This kind of thing should be initiated by men. I'll give you everything that belongs to me, okay? Ye Wei knocked Yezikin's wall and took the initiative to say such words. Even Yezikin, who had been calm for thousands of years, was startled by her sudden move. But on the surface he remained as calm as ever. Pinched Ye Wei's ear, he chuckled, do you know what you are talking about? Not only was Ye Wei not afraid or shy to avoid him, but he held Yezikin tighter with a normal expression, I'm not a 3-year-old child who doesn't have the ability to think on my own. Every word I say now is very serious. But Yezikin still pushed her away for only one reason, you are still young. Yezi I followed him, and there was no distance between them. She said, "You said the same 4 years ago." At that time, I also felt that I was very weak and needed to work hard to grow up. I wanted to grow up quickly and be with you. But now, I am an adult. With one step, he jumped to Yezikin. She grabbed Yezikin's arm with both hands, raised her head, made eye contact, looked into his eyes seriously and told him, "Besides, I like you very much. I like you very much, so I can leave everything to you." In this life, it is impossible for her to change this idea. She is such a paranoid person, even if there are setbacks along the way, she knows that once a person like her has made up her mind, no matter what happens, she will never let go until she dies. You really? As a young man in his 20s, Yezikin endured it because he wanted to better protect the one he loved. But the moment Ye Wei made up his mind to reveal his feelings, some things were destined and could not be hidden. As for the person you like, you can tolerate it for a moment, but if the other person takes the initiative, then a simple sentence can ignite the desire in his heart more than anything else. Yezikin glanced at her white wrist, which was slender and smooth, and looked weak, but she held his arm tightly. Yezikin finally reminded her, "Don't regret it?" Ye Wei curled his lips and smiled softly, "I don't regret it." Yezikin grabbed her hands with his backhand, pressed her hands down, lowered his head and whispered, "I'll give you one last chance." The voice that passed by my ears was calm and mellow, like fine wine opened after being dusted, especially intoxicating. She has never been more determined than she is now. "I do not regret. Some things, as long as you follow your heart and do them, you won't regret it." And she, no matter how she goes in the future, at least she is willing at this moment. It's beautiful when two people are in love, right? She winked and placed a soft kiss on the side of his cheek. "Brother Chen, I have liked you very much since the first time I saw you." Although her childhood crush was not love, she always believed that she and him were destined to be destined. The encounter when we fell into the pool, the hug by chance, and her warm and lively company. Perhaps some things were originally arranged by God and were already destined. That's why they grew up to what they are today. It is not easy to like someone, and it is even more rare to be sincere when two people are in love. It's me who is stupid. Yezikin, who has outstanding abilities, denies his intelligence for the first time. The smile on the corner of Yes' only mouth just appeared when she saw a shadow above her head and her whole body was pulled into his arms. This kind of thing should be taken initiative by men. Eat meat? End of this chapter. My green plums are super sweet. Author, Lukixi. Chapter 634. Chapter 634 Don't eat meat. She is bold in her confession and self-sacrifice. A hug, and in a flash, she was already lying on the bed. The posture of the man on top and the woman on the bottom is particularly ambiguous. Kissed her most sensitive ear, just for a moment, and both ears were stained with a layer of red. Just a little teasing made her feel like a bolt of lightning flashed through her body, sliding away smoothly. It was a very exciting feeling. "Are you scared?" "No, not afraid." She was still determined, but in fact, her voice obviously had a little more vibrato. Yezikin put his hands on the bedside and told her, "If you are afraid, we can." "I'm not afraid, come on." Ye Wei suddenly closed his eyes, feeling as if he was facing death. She had heard Gong Qinli talk too much, and she would die sooner or later. Bah, bah, bah. It's not that unlucky, but you will experience pain sooner or later. Thinking about it makes you feel better. I am suffering now for the future. Anyway, I'm not afraid, that's what I say on my lips and what I think in my heart, but I can't control my body's reaction. Even though Yezikin was usually so flirtatious, this was actually his first time. However, the only thing that happened during the night was that it started out strong and then became weak after the main show. Yezikin, on the other hand, remained calm on the surface from beginning to end, pretending to understand and be good at it. At the critical moment when the gun went off, Ye Weiwei suddenly pointed to the bottom layer of the bedside table and said, "There are other important things." Yezikin reached out to open the drawer and took out a box inside. "Isn't it the box of condoms that Gu Li gave to Ye Weiwei at his coming-of-age ceremony last time? This thing is necessary for them. Is this what it is?" Ye Weiwei looked at the small, flat package and bit her lip in embarrassment. "I don't even know what it looks like inside. Although you can see it in supermarkets or some convenience stores where you pay, she has never seen what is inside." At a time when you are so impure, you stare at something so impure with such innocent eyes and still say very pure words. Yezikin's heart cannot be expressed in words. He has never used it either. "I can only tell Ye Weiwei, you'll find out when you open it." Two novices set out on the road. Although it took a while, they gradually reached the point. "The love is strong." "Just a little bit." Yezikin's cell phone ringtone suddenly rang. The unpleasant ringing sounds discordantly when it should be harmonious. I don't know whose hand touched the cell phone on the bedside and pressed the hang-up button. But after a while, the ringtone started ringing again and again. In fact, they can choose to hang up directly. But since the man called at this time and persisted, there was probably something going on. Ye Weiwei pushed Yezikin, who was leaning on him, and asked him in a low voice, "Look who it is." Yezikin showed impatience on his brows. The caller was still his mother, Mrs. Ye. "Mom, what's the matter?" Mrs. Ye's urgent voice came from the other end of the phone. "Chenur, that Suhui is going to be born prematurely." The news that Suhui was born prematurely was like a drop of cold water that drenched their desires completely. How so? Something must have happened. From the beginning, Mrs. Ye had no intention of letting the child in Suhui's belly survive safely, but now, Suhui's premature birth was indeed beyond everyone's expectations. Yezikin lowered his head, turned over and lay beside Ye Weiwei, and kissed her forehead. "I'm sorry." End of this chapter. My green plums are super sweet. Author, Luke Hixie. Chapter 635. Chapter 635, Keep the Elder or the Younger. Suhui was born prematurely, and everyone was worried. But everyone's anxious thoughts are different. Yehantian was anxious about the birth of the child, and Madame Ye was anxious about whether the child could be born safely. The obstetrician doctor is asking them, "Who are the family members of pregnant women?" I am." Yehantian stood up first, making Madame Ye angry and dissatisfied. Fortunately, although Yehantian has the status of an adult family member, he can only be said to be a relative like an elder brother, and he dare not say that he is the father of the child. Yehantian went to fill in some information, but Suhui had no other family members, only Mrs. Ye stayed outside. Of course she did not care about Suhui, but also wanted to wait for the result about the child. At this moment, the doctor who was delivering another baby came out with a very anxious look on his face and said, "The patient's condition is not very good. If something unexpected happens, do you want to keep her older or younger?" When hearing this question, Madame Ye only hesitated in her heart for a second and then answered simply, "Bauta." But before Mrs. Ye could get overjoyed, Yehantian had just finished the formalities and rushed over. He stopped the doctor and said, Baby. I want a baby." The doctor looked at the two arguing with a strange expression, but the situation inside was critical and there was no room for delay. Yehantian gave a decisive answer, "No matter what the situation is, we must have children." Mrs. Ye didn't know why she suddenly figured it out and relented at the critical moment. "Then let's save the child." The doctor received the affirmative instruction and entered the operating room again. Yehantian looked at Madame Ye in surprise. Mrs. Ye moved her eyes away in a dodgy manner. She figured it out because, the living Suhui is a tenacious grass, while the living children are just petals that are easy to wither, and will be destroyed when the wind and rain blow. In this way, she is still the victorious party. Seeing Mrs's proud look, Yehantian knew that she was restless, so he immediately warned her, "You'd better not make any bad ideas." "I had a bad idea?" Suhui fell down due to unsteady walking, causing the child to be born prematurely. "What does it have to do with me? The evil done by God can be forgiven, but the evil done by oneself cannot be lived. That means God will open his eyes and take away her and the wild seeds in her belly, so there is no need for me to worry about it." Mrs said sarcastic remarks with a smile on her lips. From Yehantian's point of view, Madame Ye was just adding insult to injury and making sarcastic remarks. Yehantian lost his temper unceremoniously at his first wife, pointing to the exit on the left. "Get out. Get out of here right now." Ye Wei looked at Yehantian leisurely and calmly, seeing how he lost his temper and became irritable because of another woman. She felt desolate in her heart, but she was no worse on the outside. "If you want me to leave, tomorrow the news headline will be the exposure of the illegitimate son of the chairman of Yes Group. Do you think it's ridiculous?" Yehantian tried his best to throw away his hand and stopped confronting Madame Ye. Because he really needs Mrs Ye to stay here as a shield, even if something unexpected happens, then Mrs Ye is the best witness for him to clear up the relationship with Suhui and the child. "Anyway, if you dare to attack their mother and son, don't blame me for not remembering the love we have had as husband and wife for many years. I don't know what kind of feelings there are between us. If it weren't for the Ye family group and Yezikin, they, a couple who seemed to be in harmony but were inseparable from each other, would have broken up long ago. Everything I am doing now is for my son. I will not do anything that harms Yes interests. I hope you can also promise that nothing will involve my son, otherwise. I want you Yehantian for the rest of his life. No peace." End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. My green plums are super sweet. Author, Lukixi. Chapter 636. Chapter 636. That's my son too. You'd better know the severity. I don't care about anything else, but I must ensure that my son is not stained. This quarrel brought the relationship between the two people to an end for many years. That's my son too. Yehantian said this reluctantly. But Madame Ye sneered, "I'd rather he had nothing to do with you." When Mrs Ye thought of how anxious Yehantian was about the unborn child in Suhui's belly just now, she couldn't help but think of how anxious Yehantian had been when she was leaving Yezikin. Probably because it was his first child. But when the children grow up, their emotions become indifferent. Yehantian is busy with work and basically doesn't care about Yezikin's affairs. Mrs Ye was full of displeasure when she thought of this. "You have never cared about him since you were a child. How do you think a mother like you can get any better?" Yehantian chuckled, with a hint of sarcasm. "You have been controlling him since he was a child, asking him to learn school knowledge and learn various interests at the age when others go to kindergarten. His schedule is full every day, and even the time for sleeping and getting up cannot be changed at all." When Yehantian clearly laid out the hardships Madame Ye had imposed on Yezikin sentence by sentence, Madame Ye could only respond, "I am doing it for his own good." Yehantian sneered coldly, "But you never asked if all that was what he wanted." Mrs Ye did not dare to admit defeat and remained firm in her thoughts. Facts have proved that his current success is inseparable from his hard work as a child. "I would like to ask, have you ever seen him smile?" Mrs Ye was speechless for a moment and couldn't speak. Yezikin's smile basically did not exist in Madame Ye's memory. When a child is crying for food, it is the time when the heart is purest. At that time, a smile can make a parent happy for a long time. But as he grows older, Yezikin shows that he matures earlier than others of his age. Mrsya was naturally happy. She felt that her son was born with extraordinary abilities, so she gave Yezikin all the things that could be praised in the name of cultivating interest. Kongwan's chess, calligraphy, and painting, Wu's Muay Thai and Sanda, which one has he not accepted? But it was never the path I chose. The two of them faced off, and no one wanted to let them go. They were all proud of Yezikin, their son, but they gradually became separated from their own son. I'll tell you when he will laugh, that's when he sees Xiao Li. Xiao Li is Qian Hui's daughter. She not only inherited her mother's beauty, but also her temperament. They are born with a warm sun, which can shine on the people around them and bring them warmth. Mrsya knew that Yehantian was not just saying good things for Yedui, but was using it to miss Huaqian Hui. I'm afraid you are wrong. Xiao Liao's temperament is all a figment of your own imagination. She seems weak and easy to bully, but she is very determined in her heart. Although Madame Ye was unwilling to admit Ye Weiwei, she also knew that it is impossible for a son to like a little girl with no merits. She just didn't want to follow Yehantian's wishes and let him spend the night to miss Huaqian Hui. Do you think she is the same Huaqian Hui who was bullied to death and didn't know how to resist? Shut up. Are you afraid? Are you afraid that your scandal will be exposed? This is a hospital, don't talk nonsense. They didn't know that, just separated by a wall, Yezikin covered Yewi's ears with his hands. End of this chapter. My green plums are super sweet. Author, Lukixi. Chapter 637. Chapter 637. Mother and daughter are safe. While everyone was arguing, the obstetrician came out of the operating room again, pulled down his mask, and said to everyone, "Congratulations, mother and daughter are safe." That's great. Yehantian was overjoyed, and Madame Yes' expression gradually solidified on her face. She held her hands together, her nails digging deeply into her palms, and she couldn't feel the pain. The third party who destroyed other people's families actually survived in such a critical time. Regardless of his identity, Yehantian grabbed the doctor's hand ecstatically. "Where is the child? Can I see the child?" "Sorry, the baby was born prematurely and is very weak. We will send him to an incubator for observation for a period of time." The doctor rejected his request, but deliberately said, "But you can go see the mother now." In fact, the doctor had a very bad impression of Yehantian. Every woman who gives birth to a child risks her own life. Sometimes she has no choice but to do so, but this man is determined to protect the child and never thinks about the pregnant woman lying in the operating room. Although this is not the first time this has happened, how sad would it be for a mother to know that her family chose to abandon her so ruthlessly? But having said that, Yehantian will not investigate how the doctor views Yehantian. He heard the doctor say that Suhui was in poor health, and he felt a little pity for love in his heart. Just when Yehantian was about to go in to see her, Madame Ye suddenly stretched out an arm to block him. "I said, I don't care what you think, but you must not get too involved with Suhui here." After Madame Ye's warning, Yehantian sighed heavily and stopped moving forward. When Suhui was sent to the general ward, Yehantian and Mrsya went to the child's side. Suhui gradually wakes up after going through all kinds of hardships to give birth to a child. As soon as she opened her eyes, she was chanting words like "Where is the child?" and "My child," and she was still a little confused. The nurse guarding the bed comforted her softly, "Your child is very good, she is a daughter." "Nurse, nurse, I want to see the child." "I'm sorry, your baby is premature. She is still in the incubator to observe the situation, so we can't bring her over for the time being." And Suhui was so weak that she couldn't walk over by herself. However, when Suhui heard the child is safe, she was obviously relieved. As long as she has this child, she will have no worries in this life. "Nurse, do you know where a gentleman named Ye is?" Suhui remembered that when she fell down the stairs and was taken to the hospital, Yehantian also came. Although Mrs. was also with her, she had already given birth to the child, so she had no fear. Suhui had a wonderful thought, but the nurse hesitated to speak. Suhui asked, "Have you already left?" "They haven't left. The two couples are still in the hospital, but they are with the children." "Two couples?" "Yes, it's the man named Ye you mentioned. He and his wife are both here." Hearing the nurse's explanation, Suhui lowered her head unwillingly. She thought that Yehantian would appear as the child's father at this time, but she didn't expect. "That couple are your husband's brother and sister-in-law, right?" "Why do you ask?" "When I was filling in the name of the child just now, I saw that the man named the child without hesitation, and his last name was Ye, so I naturally guessed it." "Child, what's your name?" "What's your name?" End of this chapter. My green plums are super sweet. Author, Lukixi. Chapter 638. Chapter 638. The child's name. What's the child's name? Yekina. No, I want to change my name. Although she wanted to use this child to keep Yehantian's heart, she didn't want her child to be named by someone else from birth. Suhui sat up by herself and lifted the quilt, but this series of actions had already touched the wound, making her so sad that she wanted to cry, and even if she wanted to get out of bed, she had no strength at all. The nurse was almost stunned by her. "You just had an operation and you can't get out of bed." The nurse quickly held her down and asked her to lie down again. "Let me see him. I will not allow my child to be named that. You have a good rest first, and I will help you convey it." Seeing Suhui's violent movements, the nurse could only say some words to comfort her. In fact, the nurse had previously guessed whether Yehantian and Mrs. were her husband's brother and sister-in-law. The reason was not entirely due to the names of the children, but because they all knew that those two people who chose to keep the child alive rather than the elder were probably not Suhui's natal family. The nurse was embarrassed to say it and hurt Suhui's heart. Now that she heard that Suhui didn't like the child's name, she felt even more that Yehantian and his wife were not good characters. From the time Suhui entered the hospital to the time she was born, the child's father had not appeared. The nurse also speculated that Suhui's husband might not be able to come. Now only her brother and sister-in-law were here, and even the naming of the child was not approved by the child's mother. Think about this, how miserable it is. "Nurse, go and find him quickly, please." "Okay, I'll go now." The nurse persuaded Suhui a few more words before leaving the room. Originally I thought Yehantian was still guarding the child, but when the nurse came over, the Ye family and his wife were gone. The nurse could only go back and tell Suhui the sad news. But when the nurse actually returned to the ward, she saw that Suhui was already lying on the bed and asleep again. Having just given birth to a baby, she was bleeding heavily and was physically weak. The ability to talk soberly just now was already stretched to the limit. Suhui's child was born. In order to avoid suspicion, Mrs. and Yehantian threatened each other, so the two of them left the hospital temporarily. At this moment, Yezikin and Yeiwei appeared. Although I don't want to admit it, I have to recognize the fact that child has really come into this world. When the two of them stood outside the glass window and looked at the little baby in the insulation room, they had an indescribable feeling in their hearts. Yeiwei grinned bitterly. "Suddenly I want to know, will that child really grow up to be like my mother, as that man expected?" Hearing this, Yezikin suddenly frowned and asked, "Are you soft-hearted?" Those forward questions seemed to be a sharp knife piercing Yeyi's heart. She shook her head soberly. "I don't, she has nothing to do with me. I told you that this child shouldn't have appeared, but even premature birth didn't kill her. Are we going to strangle her life? I don't want her to live in my mother's name, but I can't destroy her with my own hands." When the child was not born, they would not have so many feelings. But when I see that small, soft ball moving and having fresh life, I really can't have any distracting thoughts about the innocent child. In the middle of the night, the nurse on duty went to the incubator to check the child's condition, but stopped in front of the premature incubator with the echina sign on it. Originally planned to give the child an artificial turnover, but found this child, this child. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. My green plums are super sweet. Author, Lukixi. Chapter 639. Chapter 639. The child is not breathing. The child is not breathing. Although the premature incubator prevents infection and provides an adaptive temperature, it requires manual turning to adjust the body. When the nurse was preparing to do this, she unexpectedly discovered that the newborn baby girl was unable to breathe at first sight. The nurse thought she was wrong at first, but when she called the doctor in a panic, scientific proof put the cruel fact in front of them: the child died. This premature baby, who has only survived for a few hours since birth, still failed to survive. Notify her family immediately. After hearing the news, the cold weather in the night deteriorated rapidly and he asked a doctor for treatment. But it is difficult for such a small baby girl to survive, and no miracle will happen again. Yahantian thought that the Gu family had excellent medical skills and sought medical treatment indiscriminately when he was ill, so he even called the Gu family in the middle of the night. When Dan and Mrsya heard Yahantian's address to the person on the phone, they immediately grabbed Yahantian's cell phone. The unprepared Yahantian didn't have time to react. The phone had already fallen into Madame Ye's hand, and the call was also hung up. Madame Ye scolded Yahantian, "Do you want your scandal to be made public?" In comparison, Mrsya is the calmest one. "Yahantian, you'd better recognize the reality. The child is dead and there is no way to save it. It is her life." Yahantian certainly refused to accept his fate. But in the end, all he could do was hold the child's cold body. Looking at the child's ungrown appearance, Yahantian felt extremely sad. Mrsya stood by and stared at him, guarding him. That baby girl reminded her of her unborn daughter. "Have you finally realized how painful it was when I lost my daughter? What an eye-opener." Just the second year after Yezikin was born, Mrsya became pregnant again. It's a pity that Yahantian may be destined to have no children. This is all retribution, so that you can't get what you love, and everything you want will be taken away from you. Mrsya smiled miserably, left a curse like a broken thought, and dragged her tired body away. Suhui's daughter is dead. It's true that God is helping her. Early on the second day, Mrsya ordered someone to buy a bunch of good supplements and send them to the hospital. She personally mentioned Suhui's ward and went to visit Suhui. The nurse saw Mrsya's hands full of things and thought that Mrsya was kind-hearted. After all, when the caesarean section was performed, Mrsya initially insisted on protecting the adult. The nurse took the initiative to mention to Madame Ye about Suhui's physical condition and her eagerness to see her daughter. She hoped that Madame Ye could comfort Suhui after Suhui woke up. After all, it is heartbreaking for a mother to accept the death of her child. "Mrsya, I'm sorry to bother you." "Okay, you go out first. I'll say something to her. I hope no one will disturb her, lest she become emotionally unstable." "Don't worry, I'll ring the bell when you need me." The kind nurse left the room after explaining a few words, closing the door softly as she left. "Leave Mrsya and Suhui in the ward." Mrsya looked at Suhui with her eyes closed, with a smile on her face. "You think you can sit back and relax after your child is born, and wait for the rest of his life to be rich, wealthy, and wealthy?" Mrsya implies that Suhui is ambitious and tries to fly up a branch and become a phoenix. Suhui, who was sleeping soundly, did indeed open her eyes. After Suhui's incident is over, Of course, MRS's incident will be brought out. What will be Brother Chen's identity? End of this chapter. My green plums are super sweet. Author, Lukixi. Chapter 640. Chapter 640, Your daughter is dead. My daughter was born safely. Is MRSya disappointed? Madame Ye looked over with a sharp look. Are you provoking me? Suhui doesn't dare. I just want to thank MRSya for your kindness in allowing me to give birth to my daughter. Suhui sat up from the bed carefully. MRSya smiled when she saw her appearance. You just gave birth prematurely and are weak. You should lie in bed and take a good rest before getting up. These supplements are of the highest quality and will ensure that your body recovers quickly after taking them. Suhui looked up and saw the things that Madame Ye had placed on the table. Judging from the packaging alone, they seemed expensive. She had come into contact with many expensive things during her pregnancy with Yehantian, and when she saw those supplements, they were indeed very good. But she was doubtful and asked Madame Ye, are you so kind? MRSya doesn't make any noise or make trouble to her now. She seems to be in a very peaceful state of mind. But compared with the attitude before and after production, there is really a big gap, which makes people feel confused. MRS Knight reached out and fiddled with the supplement boxes. From the beginning to the end, nothing was lower than 4 digits. It doesn't matter what I think in my heart, what matters is that these things are good. Thank you very much, MRSya, but I think Han Tian will give me something better, and I don't want to refuse his kindness. The implication is that she did not want to reject the better one sent by Yehantian, so she had to reject the defective one sent by Madame Ye. He also named Yehantian's name clearly, making it clear that he was showing off to Madame Ye. But MRSya was not angry. MRSya was really lifeless now, and her eyes looked at Suhui with a bit of sympathy. After Suhui said those words, MRSya nodded in agreement. This is what it should be. You almost lost your life when you gave birth to the child. Han Tian did not hesitate to choose to save the child. He feels guilty for you, so he should compensate you more some. MRSya inadvertently revealed her unexpected choice during the birth operation to Suhui. Suhui's eyes widened when she heard this. MRSya shook her head. You can't believe it, right? Suhui gritted her teeth and insisted on protecting her face, deliberately saying, some women are very jealous, and what they say does not have much credibility. MRSya sneered. Suhui, before the child was born, you were like a mouse seeing a cat, avoiding me and talking down to me. Now that the child has come out of your belly, you feel so comfortable that you talk to me sarcastically. Suhui didn't mean that. I just hope MRSya won't stir up trouble. After all, such a woman is the least liked by men. Suhui tilted her head and snorted. Although she said so, she didn't think so in her heart. She thought that after she woke up, she didn't hear the doctor talk about the danger of giving birth and the choice of taking care of her child. Madame Ye must have deliberately provoked her because she was jealous that she had won Yehantian's heart and gave birth to her daughter safely. I will not be affected by your words. Is there anything else, MRSya? If nothing happens, just go out. I want to rest well and spend time with my daughter early. Oh? Are you taking a break just to spend time with your daughter? MRSya asked knowingly, and then added, then I think there's no need for it. What? I mean, you don't have to be so anxious to spend time with your daughter. After all, you won't be able to see her until you get some rest. What do you mean? Your daughter is dead. Someone is curious who killed that child? End of this chapter.